As an illustrator, I've seen so many beautiful illustrations done every November for Folktale Week, and I've just kind of admired from afar, but this year I decided to get in on it myself. Mainly because I had a baby this year, and I've been very sort of just off my schedule, if that makes sense, my art making schedule. It's really easy for me to sit in bed and work on the iPad digitally, but stuff like this where I'm at the desk, my paints are out, and I'm working for an extended amount of time, that is very hard for me in this in this chapter right now. So Folktale Week was sort of a way for me to sort of prove to myself that I could still do it, that I could get back into it. And anyways, so that's sort of the motivation behind why I chose to join Folktale Week this year. The first prompt of the week was night. And I thought, well, okay, how can I make night, I don't know, more whimsical, introduce some figures and some light? Because I thought to myself, you know, nighttime scenes are only interesting to look at if there's light in them somewhere. So that means like stars or the moon or little light sources like I'm doing here, these 3 girls holding lanterns. That's what makes the nighttime sort of shine in a painting, is the contrast between light and dark. So that is what I chose to do for this. For this particular image, I opted to use acrylic ink and Arches paper, and I actually, as I was working on this image, I regretted that choice. I don't know if you can tell from the video, but the Arches paper really just soaks up every last ounce of ink that I put on it, so there's no like, it's just harder to get like a fun sort of watercolor looking bleed on Arches paper, and that's just because Arches is so high quality. It's basically like painting on a sponge. Like it will seriously just suck up anything you paint on top of it, and so I felt like I was using so much ink and I felt like I just couldn't quite move it around the way I wanted to. I don't know, it's kind of a hard thing to explain, but yeah, the Arches I was using was the hot press Arches, so it didn't have a texture to it. It's not really meant for watercolor, it's more meant for like heavy paint mediums and mixed media and stuff like that. So I don't know, this paper choice was not the best, but I made it work, and I think actually in the end it produced sort of an interesting effect. I think technically for Folktale Week, I was supposed to choose an actual folktale that exists and illustrate it following the prompts. I'm pretty sure that's what most illustrators do. I'm not sure, but that's not what I chose to do. In the end, this kind of looks like a different version of Little Red Riding Hood, and that was completely unintentional. I actually sort of followed this theme of like girls in red hoods, I guess you could say, for my other illustrations too. It was just sort of what was flowing for me. So anyways, I unintentionally sort of made a spin-off of Little Red Riding Hood, and you'll see that a bit later in my other illustrations that I show. Lately lately I've been really inspired by this oil painter I found named Jeremy Miranda. His work is so interesting to me, especially his night scenes. He does these sort of Christmas time night plein air paintings of his neighborhood that are absolutely to die for. I love them so much, and the moodiness, that atmosphere he captures is absolutely perfect. It's this type of stuff that makes me question like what I'm doing with my life, and maybe I should just like become a plein air painter and paint outside every day and have that be my life. It's just so inspiring to me. I love it so much. And so that sort of feeling is sort of what's inspiring this painting. I would love if this painting reminded someone of a Jeremy Miranda painting. That would be a huge compliment. In the end, doesn't look anything like his work. That's sort of typical for illustration, at least in my experience. Like, when I am sort of taking inspiration from a certain illustrator, for a time, I'll, just kind of pull up their artwork and have it in the background as I'm working, and just, I don't know how to explain it, but just be inspired by them as I'm working. Whenever I do that, I fully anticipate my work to just transform and look exactly like their work, and oh my gosh, there's going to be so many copyright issues with this, and everyone's going to know that like I'm totally copying this artist, and that literally has never happened. Like, in the end, my work always sort of looks like it was made by me. And that's kind of the case with every artist I've ever met. Like, an artist, 2 artists, or even 10 artists, 100 artists can depict the same exact scene, and you'll still be able to tell that they were different people who made those scenes. Like, each person's painting is going to come out completely unique to them. And in my mind, that is basically the essence of style. Like, you just can't run away from it. Style is what you can't run away from. And it's kind of frustrating sometimes when you want to just be immersed in someone else's style, or I don't know, purposely alter how you make art. But in the end, I truly believe that, you make art the way you see things, and the way you see things is distinct from everyone else. I gotta be honest, this painting was probably my favorite that I did for all of Folktale Week. And you'll see why, I think. I ended up making an animation out of this. The prompt was rain, and I just thought, it would be a shame to sort of pass up this easy opportunity to make a GIF of a rainstorm. And so that's exactly what I did. I made a little GIF at the end just on Procreate with the animation assist tool, and it was so fun. I think it really added something to this piece that I don't know, it just made it sort of special. This piece was also, I believe it was the piece I made that got the most attention on Instagram. Not that that's like, what we're striving for as artists is pleasing the algorithm, right? But that's what happened. And, I should have seen that coming, because it really seems that Instagram these days is all about motion, all about video, and just, trying to be TikTok. So I totally should have seen that coming. But anyways, that is what happened. think another big reason why I enjoyed making this painting so much was because I was actually using the right tools, and that made a huge difference. So I was using watercolor ink on watercolor paper. This paper is Fabriano, I believe. Fabriano, as we Americans say. Anyways, this is a really fancy, nice, sort of treat-yourself paper that was gifted to me a while ago, and oh man, I get so intimidated by fancy paper. I'm sort of used to Arches at this point. Arches kind of feels like an old friend to me at this point. I've illustrated entire books on Arches, but this special watercolor paper is just like, oh, I don't want to ruin it, I don't want to make something bad on it, and anyways, I can end up psyching myself out a little bit. Real quick, I'm going to interrupt this video to tell you that if you like this format of video, this is actually almost exactly what I post on Patreon every month. So if you're looking to dive deeper into an illustrator's process, subscribe to my Patreon. I'm Audrey Day Illustration on Patreon. See you there. This white watercolor ink was surprisingly opaque as I was using it, and it was really fun to go in and just add just like a smattering of raindrops on this painting. I was debating leaving the girl's cloak white in this painting, but I thought to myself that, I mean, other than the ground, there wasn't much darks in this. So, I mean, the trees I wouldn't really classify as super dark. They were supposed to kind of fade into the background, just like the horse's bridle, and that's it. And I thought to myself that it would be a little bit more, I don't know, solemn feeling if her cloak was black, and so that's why I chose to do that. And then you can see here I'm going into Procreate and adding a ton of different layers of raindrops, and that is what I use for my animation. Alright, so the prompt for this painting was book, and I gotta admit this one was just squarely in my comfort zone. This is something I draw all the time, like one of my, I mean, it's what I call it a comfort zone drawing. One of my comfort zone drawings is basically just like people reading. I don't really know why that is, it's just something that I return to all the time, and it actually got to the point where in my last book project, I was drawing too many kids reading, and the publisher was like, okay, we need to take away some of these literary children from these spreads, like, it's just too much reading. And I was like, yeah, I understand why. Anyways, so this was really fun for me to make, just, you know, purely fun, no real challenge here. I thought it would be interesting to sort of take a warmer color palette to this prompt and see what I could do with it. I think I used like 3 different warm colors. I used like an orange, a sepia, and sort of a more red, like a crimson color. And anyways, I think this one turned out really nice. I really tried to get some interesting textures in this one. I think with the Fabriano paper, when I was using it for that horse painting I did yesterday, I sort of discovered dry brushing. I know that sounds so silly, but like, it had just never really occurred to me to dry brush with watercolor ink, and so I'm doing that with this painting. So for this prompt, charm, I kind of saw, as I was brainstorming ideas for this painting, I kind of saw two paths forward that I could take. One was sort of, I don't know, just depicting a charm, literally, like a good luck charm or a sort of like a spell being cast by a wizard or something. So that was the first option. And then the second option was sort of focusing on the relationship between the characters and the charm itself, if that makes sense. So focusing a bit more on the interaction than the thing. So that's kind of the path I chose to follow for this. I thought it would make for a little bit of a more interesting composition to just and make it a little bit more illustrative, if that makes sense. I mean, interaction is something that art directors and publishers and editors are always trying to amp up in illustrators' work, it seems. And so anyways, that is what I focused on for this painting. I think it turned out pretty well. It also got a fair amount of attention on Instagram when I posted it. I kind of think that was mainly due to sort of the more graphic composition I chose to do for this. So the two cliffs and then you'll see like the little charm falling down the middle. And I think that was sort of the reason why. But yeah, I really had a fun time making this one. It was sort of a breeze to make, just laying down some texture, putting a wash over it, doing the characters real quick. I didn't put a whole lot of effort into like color palette or making anything super detailed, so I pretty much whipped this one out, I think, in like an hour, I want to say. for this last Folktale Week illustration, I chose to deviate from my process I'd kind of established for the rest of them and do something completely different. I actually decided to basically just work in tons and tons of layers with mostly dry mediums actually, and then I'd sort of combine them all together, sort of working like a painter but with like pastels and neocolor crayons and colored pencils and stuff like that, and that was really fun for me. This is actually the exact process I followed for my most recent children's book. I think you get a lot of fun texture from working like this. It just takes a lot longer. A question I asked myself a lot while in the process of this most recent children's book project that I was working on was, how can I sort of create lines without actually drawing lines? So you'll see in a moment I start working on sort of like the little sagebrush bushes that are in front of her, and instead of just putting the branches in with pastels or colored pencil, I sort of work around it so it's the negative space in the paint, if that makes sense. Anyways, I'm drawing all around the object rather than drawing the object itself, and that's something I really tried to do a lot because I think it really makes a scene a little bit more, I don't know, sophisticated looking, a little bit more purposeful. So that's why I chose to do this.